a message far and near. The time is now. The place is here.
Each of us wants what will suit us and our own folks best. And so the producers of our free enterprise goods have to work to give us a wide variety of good old American choice.
(1963), the defining year of the Civil Rights Movement. It culminated with the March on Washington, but the year started with a promise from Alabama Governor George Wallace.
And I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
In April, Martin Luther King Jr. is arrested during anti-segregation protests. He writes his seminal letter from a Birmingham jail. I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. Just as the prophets of the 8th century BC left their villages and carried their "Thus say the Lord" far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns, and just as the Apostle Paul left his village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to the far corners of the Greco-Roman world, so am I compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my own hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid. Later that spring, Martin Luther King Jr. and the SCLC launched Project C in Birmingham, Alabama. The C stood for confrontation. It was a campaign of civil disobedience used to confront Birmingham Commissioner of Public Safety, Bull Connor.
You can never whip these boys if you don't keep you and them separate. I found that out in Birmingham. You've got to keep the white and the black separate.
In May, Bull Connor uses fire hoses and police dogs to attack civil rights protesters. Images of the brutality are widely publicized and build sympathy across the country for the civil rights movement. A month later, a federal district court challenges Governor George Wallace's Segregation Now promise in Alabama, and the University of Alabama is ordered to integrate. Governor George Wallace blocks the schoolhouse door to prevent 2 black students from enrolling. On June 11th, President John F. Kennedy addresses the nation.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This afternoon, following a series of threats and defiant statements, the presence of Alabama National Guardsmen was required on the University of Alabama to carry out the final and unequivocal order of the United States District Court of the Northern District of Alabama. That order called for the admission of 2 clearly qualified young Alabama residents who happen to have been born Negro. I hope that every American, regardless of where he lives, will stop and examine his conscience about this and other related incidents. This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal.
Just hours after President Kennedy's speech, civil rights activist Medgar Evers is assassinated in his driveway in Mississippi. Deadly aim to the back of his head by Byron Della Beckwith, a white supremacist. It will take 3 trials and 30 years before the killer is found guilty. He will later die behind bars at the age of 80. On August 1st, the Alabama State Senate considers establishing a committee to fight federal encroachment on racial matters. That same day, the Committee of 85 in Columbia, South Carolina, urges the City Council to adopt a non-discriminatory hiring policy. August 1963, after months of racial turmoil and civil rights demonstrations, the stage is set for the March on Washington. Bayard Rustin and Cleveland Robinson put it in motion on August 7th. They were part of the Negro American Labor Council. 3 days later, Malcolm X holds a rally in Harlem. He condemns the March on Washington, calling it the farce on Washington. On August 12th, Columbia, South Carolina begins the process of desegregation. Segregation signs are removed from water fountains, bathrooms, and dressing rooms, and the city adopts non-racial employment policies. Mississippi heads in the opposite direction.
The rest of America don't see it that way, Mr. Mayor.
The rest of America don't mean a damn thing. You in Mississippi now.
The state plans to bankrupt the Congress of Racial Equality by arresting freedom riders and making them appear in court. The Congress of Racial Equality paid for freedom riders' legal expenses. Freedom riders were a group of civil rights protesters who traveled to the Deep South to protest segregation. August 18th, James Meredith graduates from Ole Miss. A year earlier, he was the first African American admitted to the university. His enrollment was met with deadly riots, and he could only attend class, accompanied by armed guards. 9 days later, a bomb explodes near Henry Monteith Treadwell's house in Columbia, South Carolina. Monteith was one of 3 students to desegregate the University of South Carolina. More than 2,000 buses, 21 chartered trains, 10 chartered airliners, and uncounted cars converge on Washington, D.C. A total of about 250,000 joined the March on Washington and to listen to Martin Luther King Jr. deliver his I Have a Dream speech.
Spread the message far and near. The time is now. The place is here.